Oh, we're going to go live now to Adiyaman, where Dr. Rizwan Naseer is the head of the Pakistani rescue team who's been operating in this area. Rizwan, good to see you. I hope that you're able to hear us.
Yes, I think, yes, we can hear you.
Okay, amazing. Tell us what you and your crew have been able to do. When were you finally able to arrive?
Yeah, we were here on the second day. So we were here on the 7th, and I think we were one of the first international teams to be here. And at the moment we arrived, I think we immediately started that evening the entire rescue operation. And we had the life locator devices. So we were, people were just asking us, this tragedy is overwhelming, asking us, come here, come there. And so we almost have searched almost 51 buildings with the life locator device. And almost we had 6 potential sites where we could find alive people. We were suspecting that they were potentially alive people. And then finally we had about almost from the 6 sites, we carried out the operation. And so far we've gotten about 6 people alive, extricated 6 people alive from those sites. And it was from the 3 sites that we were able to get 6 people out alive. It's this tragedy is unbelievable. I've never seen anything of this type. This city, you can imagine every street has a building collapse. And some of the streets even may have 2 building collapse. And even the other buildings, I don't know whether they'll be livable or not. This kind of tragedy I've never seen before.
Rizwan,
And with all the people from Pakistan, it's a deep condolences for this, and we really feel for the people of Turkey. Yeah.
I'm so happy that we have you live. I have so many questions for you because we haven't
Yes,
really been
please.
able to talk to very many rescuers because of the situation. So I'm going
Yeah.
to keep you for as long as I possibly can, but don't let us hold up your efforts. I know you have a lot
Yeah.
to do. Okay, so when a rescue team goes, like your team,
Yeah.
for example, how many people are we talking and how much equipment were you able to bring?
Yeah, we have a 51-member team, and basically when the teams deploy, they need a minimum certification. So I think we are the UN classified team, UN INSARAG, which is the International Search and Rescue Advisory Group. So that's the group of the United Nations which certifies the team. So we brought in our certified team, which is a 51-member team. So they had all the cutting equipment, all the life locator devices, and which is essential to, number one, to first of all see if there is any potential victim inside, and then you carry out a detailed operation. And during that operation, then you are able to get the live victim out. So when we were conducting an operation on the very first night, when we got this lady out, I remember it was almost 6-7 hours. We were able to get into a very narrow trench. Then her foot was trapped. We had an option of amputation, which was we wanted to save her foot. So it was a very difficult. There was debris falling, and then finally, we were able to get her foot out from there.
Okay,
So
so
we could get the, yeah.
oh, sorry, I know there's a bit of a delay, so bear with us. When you say that you have life sensing equipment, what is it? Is it a sound amplifier? Is it infrared? Tell us how that works exactly.
Yeah, there are multiple kind of devices. I think there are acoustic and seismic sensors. And then apart from the acoustic and seismic sensors, you've got other devices in which you've got, specialized sensors. Then you've got cameras where you make a hole. Instead of doing a complete entry, you would just make a hole and see inside if there's any potentially live victim. Then you put up these sensors. This is specialized devices which you can keep over the rubble. And they are able to, through different, using different means, they're able to get to the site and identify the live victims. And then of course you have the thermal imaging cameras as well. These are some of the quite high-tech equipment. They help us in looking and identifying if there are any potential victims. Like we at one side, they were expecting that probably there is somebody alive, but when we put it at 2 or 3 different locations, we saw a lot of movement taking place, and we realized it was a cat which was moving in that rubble. So you have to be very sure, because it was unalive, but the way it was moving, that was not possible for a human being to move. So
Very
you need to
interesting.
see a lot of that stuff. So all that. So then once you've identified those, like for instance, when we carried out the search with the live detectors, that was almost on 51 sites, and then from there we shortlisted about 6 sites where we had potential victims, and from there, then finally we were able to get 6 people out from 3 potential sites.
When you got there to Adiyaman, and this is on the far eastern edge of the disaster area, Was
Yeah.
accessibility difficult? Did you have trouble reaching that
Oh
area?
yes, it was indeed a nightmare because we got to Istanbul and we could have arrived even very early on the seventh morning, but then getting number one to Istanbul and then the flights had to take off. But because when we arrived at this airport, they would not allow us to come out because virtually, everybody is they've left the place and they were like they had come onto the runway. There were about 100, must have been around 500, 600 people over there, and they desperately just wanted to get into the somehow into the aircraft, and so we had to control the situation, and then we were able to come out of the into the off the plane, and then finally out of there.
So you finally get into town.
So you can imagine the kind of see this the debris all around. I can see different all buildings have collapsed and the different teams. So it's like all areas have been. I can't. It's hard to believe how the entire city is virtually has been affected.
So you get into town with your team of 51 people from Pakistan. How do you
Yeah,
know where to begin? What do you do? And are
yeah.
you registering with local officials that direct you,
Yes,
or are
yes,
you just
yes.
going where to whatever you see?
I think that's a very appropriate question because the moment we arrived, we are actually then it was the mayor's office and the mayor and the governor's office. So there they have set up the team, although the building has a lot of cracks, but still it's standing there. And so we got to the to desk and we were contacted, and informed them that we were there. And they told us, and the people coming right to that office, that this is somebody's over here trapped. So we moved with that team. Then there was another person coming. So that was our main liaison place where people were coming and we could go from there. So the team of the district of the mayor's office and then the AFAD team, they coordinated the entire effort.
And you said that you were able to check 51 buildings in that city. You were able to pull somehow 6 people out alive. How many
Yeah.
people were you able to locate who unfortunately did not survive?
But there would be multiple bodies. Even now, when they're clearing the rubble, there'll be multiple people who would have actually been, who would be potentially looking at. And so that's something which has been obviously going on. And then, so there'll be multiple others who would actually be, yes.
And then each one of these operations at specific
These are
buildings.
the search basically goes on for the live victims because when obviously
Sure.
the number is immense, it's not possible to get spend time on clearing so much of debris just to get the dead bodies out. So as you're clearing
Definitely.
the debris, then you keep finding dead bodies, and yeah, it's a huge loss. Yes.
So in each building, are you finding far more fatalities than you are survivors?
Of of course, the people who could leave. There's an initial search, which is the surface search, and then the initial search during most of the people are able to leave. Then there are people who are trapped in that rubble. Like for instance, you have beams, so there would be beams, and you would have certain voids where people get trapped, and they are not able to come out. So those are the people where you get an access and you're able to get them out. So like for instance, yesterday almost about 82 hours, we got a 16-year-old boy out. And
Wow.
so yeah, so that was something, yeah, and he was so happy to be back with the family. It was unbelievable. We just couldn't, and the way we had lost hope, then we got to another side. From one side we were accessing it, we went to the other side of the building. We had to clear some debris. We finally were able to make a site. It was a very narrow passage. It was a very steady operation which went on, started at somewhere in the evening, and by the next morning we were able to get that person out, 16-year-old boy, along with that the one sister and who was 26, and I think another, yeah, 2 others. So 3 people were out from
Incredible,
there. But
incredible.
unfortunately, they lost their father. Yeah,
Congratulations. It's
yeah.
incredible what you've been able to do. Are you working in shifts? How are you getting any rest? Where are you staying? And did you bring your own food and supplies? How is your team surviving?
Yeah, it's that's a very important question because the team gets exhausted. So just get to the one of the team, the other group replaces them. They just get rarely a 2 hours, 3 hours nap, and then they come back, and the other. So this is how they rotate, and then they basically that's how they're working. Any team which comes in, the UN classification, they have to be self-sufficient. So we have our own supplies. But obviously, the biggest problem over here is the water is gone. There's no electricity in the city, but there is lots of people bringing in water. And so there is obviously drinking water, which is now available through the bottles and others. So there was an overwhelming response, I think, from the volunteers who've been able to bring all of this stuff in.
Describe for
And of
us,
other setups, yeah,
thanks so much. Describe
please.
for us how much the tremors are affecting the work that rescue crews
Oh,
are trying to do.
that has been, this is the mayor's building, and we are at the back of it. And I think there were several times that there were some jolts, and immediately people started rushing out. And so we have died in the middle of the night as well. We were just put back, exhausted, resting in one of the places, and it because it's cold as well under a shed. And
Right.
then suddenly these jolts come in, and you just rush out even during that period.
I
So
think
yes,
one
there were a few
thing,
jolts yesterday.
when viewers look at these rescues, when we look at these rescues of people coming out of a hole in what looks like a mountain of rubble, the first thing you think is, how on earth did they survive? First, the initial collapse, but then the days of cold and without water and food, obviously. From what your expertise tells you, how do they make it through?
Yeah, it's basically it's a miracle. I must say it's a miracle. That's when God wants to save you, then he has his own ways, which are just unbelievable. Because imagine the entire building comes down, and there is a slight triangle. There's one wall which has fallen, or a beam which has fallen, and you are just trapped in a very small place. And then somebody comes, and out of holes you just are able to come out. It's just nothing short of a miracle. So it's just that when God wants to save you, it will save you from the most unbelievable circumstances. So that's unbelievable.
I can't believe in just a short number of days, you said that you were there on day 2. It is only day
Yeah.
5, and your team has been able to survey 51 buildings in that one city. When you detect a sign of life, how long has each of these rescue attempts been taking on average?
Oh, this is basically, like we said, 6 potential sites were identified, and we started working over there. And out of only the 3 potential sites that we worked, where we were working, we were able to get 6 people out. 3 we could not. Yeah, there were not people now. And there was one lady who was badly trapped, and her legs were like tied, and there was no chance of obviously these were the 6 alive victims, and the rest of them, obviously, some of the places we went, the people were no longer alive.
And each place where you've conducted a successful rescue, are we talking days of work or hours, or
Yeah,
does
yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
vary dramatically from scene to scene?
You can imagine that the 16-year-old boy was on the 3rd day that we identified this had potential victims. We had identified there were almost 6 of them over there, and we started the operation in the afternoon. And by next morning, one side we had totally given up. We thought it would not be possible anymore, and then we continued the operation overnight. And by the next morning, we were able to, it was by next day got in the morning. We got 2 people out, and finally the boy came out somewhere in the afternoon. So you can imagine it was almost what, 16 hours operation, 15, 16 hours, yeah, something like that, yeah.
Incredible. Just a few months ago, Pakistan had a disaster of epic proportions of its own, the flooding.
Yeah.
Are your
Yeah.
team members coming from those areas that they experienced that themselves? And did you work in that disaster as well?
Yeah, of course. We carried out a huge operation. We had our teams over there in the flooded areas, and we evacuated about 80,000, and then we were transporting almost 120,000. So we had the entire operation conducted over there. So because of the timely evacuation, we were able to get the death toll to a very low figure.
If you could say what is needed in that area for all people watching everywhere who want to help, what would you suggest would help most the situation that people could do?
What has happened is actually it's been an overwhelming thing. We've done the initial rescue. Obviously, most of the people would come out alive in the first 48 hours. Then, and the first 5 days, you find live victims. Only then there'll be a couple of 1 or 2 guys here and there who may have a miracle, come out. But majority people come out during the first 5 days. Then it starts after the initial search and rescue operation. Then starts the relief and rehabilitation process. And during the relief and rehabilitation, they probably need to rebuild this entire city. They'll have to check the buildings if they're safe for people to live, because I see cracks in almost all the buildings. So whichever buildings are safe, there'll be people, they'll move back into those buildings, but they'll have to really rebuild all the other buildings and really make sure that the scale and the stability of the buildings and the Richter scale, which they must meet to be safe for people to live over here.
So Rizwan, will you and your team continue looking for signs of life for days now, just in case people have made it?
Yeah. Until the entire support is required, we'll be there to whatever we can do for our brothers and sisters, in fact.
The sensitive equipment that you have with you, I know it detects movement. How small a movement are we talking here? If somebody is in there and can't move and they're just breathing, or, I mean, will these things hear a breath? Will they hear a heartbeat?
Yeah. What you do is, normally if somebody's even tapping something, tick, 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 and then we're able to pick them up. So these are very sensitive equipments. And then you can obviously, you do a triangulation, and you can also identify the exact place where that person would be. So there are several techniques that you use. And then if you, like, for instance, we went to every building because we had the detector. So everybody was coming. Can you please bring the detector over here? Can you identify if there's any person? I'm suspecting that somebody was alive over here. So then when we identified out of these buildings, only 6 buildings where we had potential victims, that's where we then started this entire using all the cutting, breaching equipments and things, looking for those people and going into those holes to find people out and to get them out.
Rizwan, first of all, I can't.
Okay.
I can't believe how clearly we're able to hear you. It's incredible. It's great to have you on the show, and everyone watching, I'm sure, cannot thank you enough for the tireless work you and your crew have been doing there for days. It leaves us speechless. Thank you.